Uh, all right, the Hangout on Air is now live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I'm Christiana Ellis.
And I'm Mike Mateen.
Tonight, we're going to be talking about Survivor Kaoh Rong, Episode 5. Time for a mix-up. Tribe, swap, all that good stuff. Keeps the players hopping, which is nice, just especially since the Braun tribe had been so decimated. It's nice to get it all mixed up a bit more.
Yes.
Before we get into too much of this new episode, we do have a comment from our good buddy Mike K.
Hey.
Yay! So he left this on the notes, podcast notes for the last episode. He says, really enjoyed your analysis of this most dramatic heat exhaustion and heat stroke episode. Thanks. Check out the challenge preview with the Dream Team. And he has a YouTube link here. And you'll see that when they tested this challenge, they had 3 flags marking the general area of the 3 bags. They often make changes after the Dream Team practice, and in this case, I think they found the digging to be too easy and fast with the 3 flags, but removing the 3 flags made the digging much harder and longer to accomplish. I wonder if they actually retested the digging portion without the 3 flags or just assumed it would be slightly harder and more difficult. Also, John Kirchhofer says the challenge is designed to be gritty, hot, and just disgusting. That seems like a poor design decision when the temperature would be over 100 with high humidity. Yeah. So that is interesting to know that when they did the test, they did actually have something that made that part of it easier, which it kind of falls in line with some of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Where it was just kind of a matter of degree, not to make a temperature pun. That was unintentional, but I'll take it. The idea just that it was supposed to be hard, but they just they overshot it.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, if anyone wants to watch that YouTube link, you can find that over at christianaellis.com on the podcast notes for the last episode. On to episode 5. My first note is that Joe has an infected cut on his finger, which, other than giving Peter something to do, it turns out to not have anything to do with anything.
Yeah, it was just showing that Peter's not always a complete asshole, that he does have some redeeming traits.
Mm-hmm. Even if he says specifically to camera that he decides to strategically pander by taking care of his injured teammate. But he could have refused or something. Although it was an interesting cut because it had been, I guess, a deeper cut, and then it looked like it would heal in the middle, but still kind of be infected on the ends. And then because it wasn't kind of completely sealing, he would keep sort of popping it open again, is what he said. And yeah. I could see that from the image, but at the same time, I wasn't clear, like, how would it, I'm not sure how you would do that in the first place. Like, how would you make it heal in the middle? Maybe it's just because it is infected and that's the parts that are infected are not healing.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't pay enough attention to it to really have any further comment. I do.
Yeah, well, it didn't really end up having anything to to influence other than just like we said, giving Peter that opportunity to show that it's like, okay, well, he can help with some stuff, but in the meantime, while they're all busy, we have Neil, Mr. Ice Cream, going off and doing some idol hunting, and good for him, he finds it. And that's great. That means all 3 are accounted for now.
Yes, and he managed to find it with no suspicion and use the actual tool.
Yeah. Pretty great.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I don't know that I had had this thought before it happened, but when he found it, I felt happy that it was him that had it.
Yeah, I guess he wasn't like the person that I thought was like, oh, that's my favorite and the one I want to have it. But I was happy also that he had it because I don't mind him, and I think he will put it to good use, especially seeing the way in which he found it.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he managed to get away without drawing suspicion to himself,
Mm-hmm.
find the idol, get back, and not tell anybody, and really process what it meant to have the super idol capabilities.
Yeah, yeah.
To which I also give Scott some credit later, like just to, I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit, but I thought his insight on paying attention to how the idols work and his role in knowing that stuff, how it influenced him a little bit in what he was willing to do in that tribal.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating wrinkle in a way that I hadn't even really anticipated, in the way that it could produce, like we saw here, someone who doesn't have an idol of their own, but also has a reason to not want someone else to flush it.
Right. Because he's a holder of some key information in that he can connect the people with the idol.
Right, right.
And while that may not ultimately turn out to be anything, it is still something that he has that others do not have, and that's valuable at this point,
Definitely.
It's not to say that he couldn't connect them and they just decide to use it on him. Like, that's not a, but knowledge is a key. So
definitely. And
so I like that they both had the insight to pay attention to what that meant and really process it. So
I agree. I think part of also my happiness for Neil was just specifically that we gave him something to do. Like, I mean, he seems like a nice guy, but other than being the one that was like the center of the tug of war, what was that, last week or the week before? Other than that, he hadn't really had a lot to do. So this kind of gave him a plot.
Yep.
So we can also just remember as
and he used his plot properly, whereas the other girl who finally got her plot, it was just kind of like, okay, you're crying and you're young and you're acting like you're young.
Yeah. Although I will say that, like, just generally in this episode was like a response to our last episode, in that it gave us significantly more screen time for both Julia and Michelle, the two people who we essentially hadn't heard anything from so far.
Right. And we will have significantly less screen time from
Anna. Yeah. Which I'm a little bit sad to see her go, just in the sense that I think that she could have been interesting as it goes, but certainly would not have rather Ty gone home.
No, and I have some commentary on how they both played that situation, knowing the same end result when we get to that.
Yeah, so obviously that's a little ways down the episode. So one of the things that I wondered when I was just thinking about the three idols that have been found, so we can remember that now Neil has the one from the original Brain Tribe, Jason has the one from the Brawn Tribe, the one that was kind of snagged under everybody's supervision, and then Ty has the Beauty idol. But one of the things I wondered is, since they fit together in pairs, but there's three of them, are they reversible in a way that, like, any one of them could fit with any of the others?
That's my guess. I thought that exact same thing at this exact same time, because he does kind of hold it up and like in a way where you sort of visualize how they fit together. And that you and I thought the same thing, is like, because we're assuming that the string on the match would be on, like, because I think the string on his was on the thin part of the yin yang.
I feel like in my head I see it the other way, but it really doesn't.
Well, either way, whichever it was. Yeah. So let's say it's like, so his was hanging like this.
Yeah.
So you and I are assuming that the match would have, if this is where the string is, would be, I'm doing a thing with my hands if you're listening.
Yeah.
it would be this way. And then, like you said, you would have to have the one that matched it. So my assumption is that they all hang the same direction, but that you can turn it and attach it, and the strings just hang opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they probably have like decorations on both sides so that it'll still look cool no matter how you're flipping it.
Yeah.
So I believe that is probably what's going on there. So we head to the beach for mixing it up, and it's interesting. I thought that first of all, they kind of specifically acknowledged that Caleb having to leave kind of messed up their numbers the way they were originally going to do it, and so they kind of improvised this sort of pseudo exile island for the extra person. I thought that was a neat way to handle it.
Yeah, I thought it was a good adaptation, other than because I thought it was better than drawing an uneven tribe and making someone sit, but then, or the other thing they could have done is drawn uneven tribes and like sent the one with the most people directly to tribal council,
that could have been interesting.
Yeah, and those things all of that would have been interesting. I thought this was the best way to handle it. I really give them credit for identifying that this was still the right move. They could have, jiggered some, redone the challenge, which we know they've done before the other way, where you can, like, when things are supposed to go to like individual challenges, but they're still team challenges. And it's like, we have your team and their team, and whoever like has a team member at the end, and it's like, that's clearly an individual challenge. You just didn't want to go to individual stuff yet.
Yeah.
They could have done that with this challenge and somehow made it like still 3 tribes, and but then, like you said, the Braun tribe probably would have lost, and they would have that would have taken another. It wouldn't have been an interesting thing to watch. This was the most interesting way that it could happen, and it was a really cool draw that the tribe with one of the tribes with the most people was one of the ones that drew, as opposed to one of the bronze, which I know obviously that odds were in favor of that, but that was still cool. And they might have even thought of that and said, well, look, the odds are it's going to be one of these favorites, which means that's where the targets are going to be, knowing that one of them is coming back, and it alleviates this Braun tribe decimation almost completely for now.
Well, plus it adds that additional wrinkle, as we saw later, where it's like, okay, well, we know that whoever we vote out is going to be replaced with a beauty tribe, and so if we vote someone out who's not on the beauty tribe, that gives the beauty tribe even more numbers.
Exactly, and that's what I was saying, is that the odds were in favor of a beauty or a brain being the one that ended up there.
Right.
And had the brains had the same thing happen, that would have been the same. So target comes off of the Braun. And honestly, now that I'm talking through it, had a Braun gone, it wouldn't necessarily have meant, like, because say if they each were a single on each independent tribe, actually no, because if
it depends on whether they're split up or if they're both together on one.
Right, because if they're split up, then they're sort of.
It almost doesn't matter because
they're like a swing vote, essentially.
Anyway,
like you're trying to lobby them to be on your group.
There's no worry that they're going to gang up with each other and go turn against you.
Right.
By them. Yeah.
So talking through you more like that. Now I'm even more happy about how they did this, because they all but eliminated there was not a huge chance that somebody from the Braun tribe would go, that someone else, some other tribe, somebody else that we like, somebody was going to have to be targeted, and other people were going to have to start making moves other than the Braun tribe. And that was an interesting result of this.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think they necessarily obviously it was a random draw. It could have been someone from the Braun tribe, but the idea that the statistics would work out that way might have been part of the equation in terms of deciding what path to take with the extra person.
Well, and that's what I was saying, is that's how I thought at first. But even talking through it, had a Braun member gone and it was only 2 Brauns left, they're probably not the targets, and we still end up with the end result of the other groups having to start moving around because they have to start doing something now, which they haven't had to do.
Well, just the mix-up in general helps with that a lot. And so unless they just had really dumb luck with the split where you end up with one of the original tribes almost completely intact, that has happened in the past. But I thought this was this did pretty well in terms of having a relatively good mix. I mean, one of the two tribes is actually literally 2, 2, and 2. Yes. So, but so in any case,
it all worked out great, and it made for a good episode. Yeah,
great. So Julia gets the I put lucky draw with in parentheses in front of lucky because it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? I think her inclination would probably to be that it's just unlucky, but there is the element of you get to skate through a tribal council. At the same time, I think probably in this context, the ability to bond with your new team is more valuable.
See, I feel like this is where I play Armchair Survivor, and I feel like, yes, I think the ideal scenario is probably not to go and to end up in a place where, but here's the thing. When you're one of the beauty tribe, then that's all of who was targeted on both sides. So she was free from all that targeting. So not bonding isn't necessarily a bad thing for her because she comes in after they've already done we have to get rid of a beauty tribe person. So when she comes back, that's no longer a must do, and people can reset and start bonding another way. Now, granted, that had to do with the draw, but that is still part of it. And then again, so now back to the Armchair Survivor. I feel like I would be happy to go do that, knowing that, in the mix-up, I have to trust the people that I'm aligned with to kind of give me the down low when I get back. Okay, here's kind of where we're going, and now you're a vote with us. And that immediately bonds me back in one way or the other. And if I come in and my alliance is on the short end, well then okay, well I now know what I have to do. If I come in and my alliance is on the high end, okay, great. Then we bond back together and we're good. And I get a free day to forget about the game, to chill for a minute on my own, which she didn't like, but I feel like and maybe I wouldn't have. This is because we've talked about this a lot. That's why we always say when you're armchair surviving, it always sounds a lot better.
Yeah. The idea of having to be by yourself and do all of the work yourself for a whole day, could feel more of like a burden, especially if, as it seems with her, you're not necessarily the person who was doing all that stuff before.
Right. And that's where, why I was looking at it from a different lens, because I feel like my personality, that would be kind of a welcome day for me, or 2 days. So just
like a break.
Yeah, it's like a break. I don't mind doing those things for myself. I wouldn't go I'm not all on the Aussie level of this is my new adventure, solo adventure. But I feel like, just chill out and take care of the stuff and sort of be on my own and do what I want to do and not have to stress about who's talking to who and who's talking to me, who's not talking to me. No one's talking to me.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it right now. And that's why the reason why I'm spending so much time on this is I feel like it's different than Exile Island, where you've been chosen to be removed from the conversation in the game.
Right.
It was just a thing that was unlucky, but you immediately come back to 2 even tribes. You don't end up on a tribe with less. You end up on the tribe that is now you're on equal tribes. It's right at the mix-up when all the group norming is still going on. That's not that all that bonding isn't done after the first tribal council. And yet we saw that today, specifically because of them like going after the beauty thing. But I think even without that scenario, that's just kind of what happens in that first one. Like everybody's still trying to figure it out. So you're kind of trying to pick what the easy target is or what makes the most sense that you can kind of align with. But the group norming goes on past that. So I feel like I could jump in 2 days later after that tribal council and just be fine. Mm-hmm. Whereas Exile Island, when you're leaving a group, they're all doing whatever they're doing, and then and they chose you or someone chose you to go there, and then you have to come back. Like that's a little different, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think, I think that there's also the element where Exile Island almost exclusively, it would also have like an idle clue or something that you're looking for while you're there. So there's kind of a pressure to it.
Yeah, and it would also usually suck, whereas at least she was just at a camp.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of differences to this that make this more appealing to me than Exile Island, even though you kind of like, I know theoretically it's similar, but to me it's very different, and that's why, like you said, I think the preference is probably still that you don't want to be there, that you want to be a part of what's going on, and part of making the moves and making things happen, and a part of the challenge where you can help your team win. But all of those things are not her. You know, she's not going to help the team win the challenge. She's not. She hasn't shown herself, as we've described, to be someone who has left the little group of 3 that they're in. So, you know.
Anyway, so
tapered off now.
That's right. So she goes off to the Brawn Beach all by herself. And so our new mixed up tribes we have the Blue Tribe, otherwise known as Chanlo, and that is composed of Jason, Nick, Neil, Sydney, Michelle, and Debbie. And so that is the one that's 2, 2, and 2. We have Debbie and Neil from the Brain Tribe, Sydney and Jason from the Brawn Tribe, and Michelle and Nick from the Beauty Tribe. And then the new Yellow Tribe, also known as Gondol, is Aubrey, Ty, Joe, Scott, Peter, and Anna. And so in that case, we have Aubrey and Peter and Joe that were all on the Brain Tribe. So there's 3 of them, half that tribe. Then there's Ty and Anna, who are both on the Beauty Tribe, and Scott, who is the only Brawn member.
Yes, which led to when you were talking about the colors of the tribes, led to a little amusing exchange when they came to the challenge.
Oh, I guess I feel like I'm not sure what you mean.
When they started to walk to their mats.
Oh, okay. And they didn't.
And Jason's like, blue. I think Michelle or whatever was trying to go to the yellow mat.
Yeah.
Because that's what she was used to going to, and he just kept like saying it. Like,
yeah, I missed that.
You know, it was really funny. It was really subtle, obviously, but it was pretty funny because she was like, and he was like trying to walk by, and he's like,
"Well, I might have been typing a note or something like that."
Yeah, like, you need to. This isn't your color anymore. You know? Yeah. The point is the fact that they used colors that were already in the game was funny because it caused that mistake. So.
Yeah. So we start off with Peter is really happy about the swap, understandably, because he was pretty much doomed the way that it was before, and so even though he's now in a mix where he's still like his best bet is still to try to work with his former Brain Tribe members, he's nonetheless better off now than he was.
Yes. I mean, if by better off we mean they have decided that guy still sucks, but he's not our priority to get rid of right now.
Yeah. So,
which is pretty much what they said.
Well, yeah. So I just mean that in terms of being in a better spot, he's in a better spot now. But the problems that led him to be in a bad spot before don't seem to have gone away. So he's just going to dig himself right back into a new hole, I think.
Oh yeah, they were so clear. They like it was almost like at one point I thought they were going to try to Well, anyway, yeah, go on. I don't want to.
Yeah, we'll go to
into
that some more.
Yeah.
So we have Scott anxious because he's the one, he's the only one from the Braun tribe on his new tribe. We have Peter talking to Aubrey, and this is where they introduce to us for the first time this idea that we want to vote off someone in the beauty tribe because they'll be replaced with another one, and we don't want to offset the numbers. And so that's, this is an example where Aubrey's kind of like, I still don't like him, I still don't trust him, but he's also not wrong about that particular strategy.
Right. That's sort of my summation was, yeah, we still don't like that guy, but he's not our priority. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So they initially, like the two of them, decide to bring in Scott. And my note here, I was thinking, isn't that still 3-3? But I forgot they also have Joe, who wasn't involved in the conversation in the scene, but presumably would be involved in that alliance as well. Yes. Essentially, it's the 4 non-beauty members against the 2 beauty members.
Yes.
Then we cut over and we finally get some significant screen time for Michelle. Good. I mean, she seems fine. It's a little bit surprising that it took so long for us to really hear anything. Although, I guess I have to recognize that there's a possibility that there were times when I thought it was Anna talking and it was actually Michelle, because I think I was occasionally confusing the 2 of them.
Yes. I agree. I think the only thing that I remembered from her was when she was talking about, like, I think it was Nick, that he was like nice to look at or something. Like, that's literally all I remembered.
So in any case, she's decided she's proactive about forming some new alliances over on her new tribe. But we also have Debbie, who has been on the offense for some time, sneaking behind the lines and doing all sorts of planning. And so she's still working it. She decides she wants to work with the Braun tribe members, Sydney and Jason. So she would be presumably wanting to have a 4 with herself, Neil, also from the Brain tribe, and then working with Sydney and Jason to vote off either Nick or Michelle. But oddly enough, we discover later that that's kind of the plan from the other side too, is both sides want to align with the Braun tribe members.
Yes.
I thought. Oh, go ahead.
Well, it started here, and I think it kind of continues on with Debbie. In my feeling now is that she doesn't win this game.
I don't think she wins. I think,
but she is amusing enough that I don't mind her being around for a little while at least.
I feel like middle of the jury is where I see her getting off.
And I'm happy with that, because there will be a point. I feel like I will tire of her at the same time that the group tires of her, and it'll be about that middle of the jury. Like right now she's, kind of quirky and interesting and, a little over the top. I mean, and not in as aggressive a way as somebody like Coach or Russell, but she is a character. Yeah. And she's just working too hard that eventually somebody's going to be like, yeah.
Well, she's still playing the kind of slightly low key and under the radar thing where we know she's being proactive and stuff, but it seems like it's still going to some degree unnoticed by everybody else. They're not necessarily all aware how hard she's working on that level.
Yeah, but eventually.
But again, yes, right. Yeah. And that's why I'm kind of guessing mid jury, because that's the point where if that's been your game, you still at some point have to kind of step forward, start making dramatic moves so that people know you did stuff. And that's where I think making that shift might be difficult.
Right. Or you end up in the other position where you continue to try to do this behind the scenes thing, but now because there are so many fewer people, it is no longer behind the scenes.
It's harder to hide.
It's harder to hide because everybody's like, well, you know what? She's been talking to me about this for a long time. now that there are only like 6 of us, and you and I have to talk and think if we want to work together, let's talk about Debbie. Oh, well, Debbie said all this about you, and well, Debbie said this about you, and this is what, you know what? Maybe Debbie isn't the one.
So I have to say I was highly amused by her wanting to. So in describing her new foursome alliance as being very tight, I was amused by her comparing it to the triple covalent bond between a carbon atom and a nitrogen atom in a cyanide molecule. The cyanide carbon nitrogen triple bond. And so just from a chemistry perspective, everybody, that is what a cyanide molecule is it's one carbon atom and one nitrogen atom, and they're triple bonded together. That's what cyanide is. But it's also just kind of a bizarre thing to compare your new alliance to. You've literally just said your new alliance is toxic with your own metaphor.
I feel like she thinks that's funny in some sort of way. Like I don't think that it's lost on her what she said. I think she's smart enough to be aware of it. It's just not aware that it's not that funny.
I figured that she was just focused, first of all, on the idea of saying that they have strong bond, and it's, maybe she's even thinking of everybody in the group has a bond with each other, and so it's like this, she has a 3-way bond with all 3 of these people, and that's maybe where she kind of got that idea. And if she knows the chemistry, that made her think of that bond. But at least the way she said it, it didn't seem like she was saying it with an awareness of the irony of it being a cyanide molecule in particular. I mean, maybe she did. I don't know. I didn't necessarily get that from the bit that we saw, but I did think that was interesting.
Yeah, and maybe I'm giving her a little bit more credit in saying that, just assuming that, like, because she has a weird sense of humor, that like the fact that it was a cyanide molecule was purposely chosen because she finds that funny somehow. So.
Yeah, I think she might be aware of it and then decided to go with it because she did find it was funny. But my guess, even though this is all speculation, we can't know for sure. My guess is that she got there from the bond first. She didn't think of.
It wasn't like trying to make a sign
and then trying to, like, what's a poison that would have a bond that could work for this? You know what I mean? I think it came the other way.
That makes sense.
But yeah, at the same time, being aware that it's a little bit funny for it to be a poison, I don't think that would have dissuaded her. But in any case, I decided. Where did I have it? I just decided to call them the Cyanide 4. But in any case, okay, so now we go over and we have Ty being just as charming as ever, and he is now charming and getting along with Joe and Scott, which is kind of just funny too, just because he's kind of I don't want to say he's going after them in an inappropriate way, but just he seems to be he gravitates towards like the macho guys. But at the same time, we don't necessarily see him with Jason much, but at the same time, he certainly seems to be getting along. Oh, so sorry, it wouldn't be Jason. Jason's on the other tribe. Sorry. But yeah, with Joe and Scott. And then Scott even specifically says that he has a man crush on Ty and considers him the #1 most valuable member of the tribe.
Right. So this part is what I think really laid the ground floor for what ended up happening. Mm-hmm. And it shows an incredible like difference in style of play. So Ty recognized that it was probably him or Anna if they were going to go to tribal council. Anna also recognized that. Ty spent his time showing why he was the right person for the tribe through his actions and through his relationships that he was building and what he was doing and providing. And Anna spent the time trying to make Ty look more, basically blow out his candle so hers burns brighter.
Right.
And that's why, like, at the end, and then this all culminates in why I really believe that, like, Ty, this was and I'll get into this in a second. This was a strategy on Ty's part as well as Anna's part. Is at the end when they are at tribal council and they are making their cases, and Ty says, I'm very uncomfortable doing this, but I need to do this is what's supposed to happen. So I'm going to say why you should keep me, and here are all of the things that I did that Anna did not do that make me more valuable. But the thing is, he had done all of them already. Whereas Anna was just sort of painting with this empty brush of like, oh, I have strong legs and that makes me good in challenges. That there was no substance to that. Whereas Ty, his argument was already there. And the fact, though, that he knew how to make that argument is why I think it was a strategy. And the reason I felt like this was important is it comes back to something that we joke about all the time, which we think about it in the negative and the reverse of when...
I think I know where you're going, and I was going to say the same thing, but go ahead.
When someone gets to play the way they want to play and call it the strategy, yes, this is like a positive depiction of that.
Yeah. Because
the right strategy for him was to play the way that he wanted to play. And I believe he was consciously aware that that was a strategy, but it was like the other way. It wasn't like saying it's a strategy was an excuse for doing something that was pissing people off. It was like, hey, the right strategy and what I like to do align, so I'm going to go do that. And that's why it was so effective for him.
Yeah.
Because the strategy and what I want to do were the same thing. And they were good things. So...
Yeah, I agree. I was going to make that same example until you beat me to it. Echo of myself again for a moment. But the idea that he's playing to his strengths in that way, that what he wants to do is, to the extent that he can not be deceptive, he doesn't want to be the one who's sneaking around and lying behind people's backs. If he can avoid it, I don't think he's naive about the fact that might be sometimes necessary, but that's not what he wants his emphasis to be. What he would ideally like is for people to keep him around because they think he is nice and helpful. And so in order to have them think of him that way, he is nice and helpful.
Right. And when he enters a situation where he is pitted against another individual, he makes himself extra nice and extra helpful. And make sure everybody and that he's kind of engaging with people to know that he enjoys their company and that he wants to be around and he wants to help. He's taking those steps. Like he likes hanging out with Scott, but he's very deliberate in how he hangs out with Scott and how he says things because he knows that he's in a certain position. Yeah. And like that carries over, especially after but he started it here. He built the groundwork here, and I was just really happy with the way that he played, other than, not to say that he shouldn't have done the thing with the idol, but it was in contrast to how Scott is seeing the idol and how Neil are seeing the idol. Ty is still seeing it as, this is my get out of jail free card when I'm in a panic mode, whereas Neil and Scott are seeing the bigger picture, which is why I was so impressed with Scott. Like Neil, yes, that's cool that he did that. Scott, I was less expecting that, to take a step back and say, maybe this isn't this is a bigger thing, and this is a little bit longer term, and this has more implications that it shouldn't be to save the guy I like or yourself. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. He's in a position where it's the interesting way that the super idol prospect adds this wrinkle where it's been the case for several seasons in a row now, where anytime that someone else has an idol, you want to try to flush it. You want to try to make them play it so that it's not in play anymore. And then maybe you can find it when it gets rehidden or something like that. But in this case, the idea that another player would be motivated to have him not play it because there's this additional thing that could happen. I think that's really cool.
It is really cool, and it gave me a lot of respect for Scott. And I don't want to say that I feel like it's just obviously Ty didn't. He was in a weird situation. He didn't play whatever perfect, but he did a lot of it so well.
Well, Ty was in the situation of having to be worried that people are just trying to trick him, and that by not playing it, he's just playing into their hands, and they're going to vote him out with the idol in his pocket. So he has that element of worry that's going to make it more difficult for him to be thinking at that next level. Not to mention the fact that he doesn't have the additional knowledge that Scott does in terms of who has the other one. He only knows about his own. And so it's kind of the idea of combining it with someone else's is like, well, who would it be? I don't know.
Right. And this is the other point I'll make on this, and we can jump back to where we were in it, is we like to, we often take this and want to relate it to how the social implications of this game we can relate to our normal lives and how our jobs work.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that Ty got wrapped around this idol feels like something I warn my team at work all the time about, and it's like misguided goals. Ty came into it with a goal of not being the guy who got voted out with an idol.
Right.
And that changed his demeanor ever since he had the idol, and it made him probably a step more paranoid than he needed to be because he had that focus. And we talk about it all the time, the focus should be on the long, how do you win the game? How do you do all this? Not don't be that guy, you know? And we talk about that at work all the time. It's like, okay, yeah, so-and-so is mad because you keep doing X. Well, we're not going to make it a goal to stop doing X. What we're going to do is we're going to take Y, which will broadly fix the problem, even if X still occasionally happens, because this is better for what we're doing. Just not upsetting this one person is not the reason to stop doing. Occasionally some things are going to happen that this person is going to get upset.
Mm-hmm.
So if our whole goal is to not upset them, we may make bad business decisions because that person gets upset that we need to do something they don't feel like doing.
Yeah.
So let's think about the reason why they're particularly upset right now and fix the global problem.
Right. And so
they'll not be upset again, but that's not the goal. Yeah.
Tying back to Survivor, it's keeping an eye on the bigger picture. Is what is best in the long run? Worried about getting voted out with an idol in your pocket versus what you potentially gain by being a little bit more relaxed with it. And it's something that can come into play when you're doing, to tie it into my work, when you're doing troubleshooting on a technical problem. Sometimes what you discover is that what you need to do is try something else instead of trying to say, well, I know that doing it this way should work, but it's not working. So I'm going to keep trying subtle variations on this method until it works, as opposed to saying, well, what if you just did this other thing instead? And sometimes that if you kind of reset your perspective and step away from what will make this strategy work and start saying, well, how do you actually solve the real problem? Sometimes you open yourself to other solutions.
You just literally described something that I've had in the back of my mind. Have I ever told you the analogy that my old boss, it came from his psychology thesis paper or doctoral paper or whatever, on organizational psychology. It's the analogy is the A, B, and C dog.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before, but maybe the listeners don't remember. So go ahead.
I'll try to tell the very quick version of it. It works better on a whiteboard because you can draw what's going on. So there's a giant wall, and there's a bone that the three dogs want is behind the wall. And so you have A dog, B dog, and C dog. So A dog, we think of him like kind of type A personality dogs. That's kind of what he's supposed to represent. So he is determined to go get that bone. So he charges up to the wall, and he gets there, and he can't figure it out. He can't he knows the bone's on the other side. He's like, you know what? I'm going to get around this wall. So he turns left, and he just starts running and running and running and running and running. And he goes, you know what? You idiot. You ran the wrong direction. You got to go the other way. And so he turns around and runs and runs and runs and runs past the middle all the way. And he keeps running and running and running. He's like, no, you must have needed to go further the other way. This isn't the right way either. And he turns and runs and runs and runs and runs and runs and runs and eventually just collapses out of exhaustion and just needs to take a break. So B-Dog, who's type B personality, watches this and's like, all right, I don't want to do what that dude's doing. So I'm going to take a step back, kind of see what's going on. So he walks backward a little bit, and he can see the ends of the wall. So he chooses which direction is the shortest, walks around the end of the wall, goes and chews up half the bone, and is on about his business. So C-Dog is sort of the hybrid of the two. So he, it's just like A-Dog at the beginning, charges forward, starts running, and he's like, you know what? I need to take a, this isn't working. Like, this whole running around thing isn't my deal. I need to take a step back. And so he walks back and he notices B-Dog is gone. So he's like, okay, well, maybe he found a solution. Let's keep looking at this from a bigger picture. Keeps walking back, sees the end of the wall, goes around, eats the other half of the bone. The bone's gone. A-Dog is now rejuvenated, and he goes, this wall will not defeat me. And so he starts digging. And he digs and digs and digs and digs and digs and digs. Comes out on the other side, and there's no bone. And the question is, how does A-Dog feel when he gets to the other side of the wall?
Oh, I remember the answer.
The answer. A lot of people say, well, he's disappointed because he didn't have the bone. No, A-Dog is ecstatic. He accomplished his goal. The wall did not defeat him. He completely forgot that the bone was ever even there. He got so focused on getting around the wall that it didn't matter about the bone. Whereas the other two dogs who took two different approaches, but always resulted in see the bigger picture, get the bone.
Right.
So, yeah.
So
that's exactly what was described, though.
Yeah. And to tie back to Survivor, the idea is you're not looking to just not be the guy who gets voted out with an idol in the pocket. You're looking to win $1 million at the end.
Right.
So that's what you always have to keep in mind. But in any case, where were we? Oh, so Anna. Here's where I feel bad for Anna is that she just through dumb luck ended up in a situation where it was her or Ty. And I like who's going to come out on top in that situation, no matter who it is. It's Ty is awesome. That's just a tough spot to be in for anybody.
I agree, but I still want to highlight the way that Ty played it versus the way that she played it. And not that in any other situation, she probably would have done better, but this particular one for this particular group, that was not the way to go. You know, and not to say she could have beaten it, which you're right. It's hard to say. She couldn't have beaten Ty at his own game. Like, she couldn't have been like, oh, well, his strategy is to be friendly and helpful, so I'll be friendly and helpful. Like, he's always going to win that. But unfortunately, when the alternative is I'm going to, like, subtly, like, cut him down and talk about how he had that, like, panicked idol search and, you know, like that's maybe not the other right alternative approach. And I don't know what it is. Like, it's an unfortunate situation because it's a very tough decision. Like, what is her strategy at that point?
Right. So, like I said, that's where I felt for her, just in the sense that I felt like there were really no good options for her. You know, and so we can choose, like, we can talk about, like, did she make the most of the situation she was given? I thought she did pretty well considering, but it was just not, it was kind of a non-starter proposition, especially because on top of him being super nice and charming and funny and helpful, he also had an idol, which just changes the math all over the place. You know what I mean? It's like, even if they were leaning towards wanting to keep him anyway, now that they know he has an idol, it's like, well, that's a whole other thing.
Well, and that's, I guess, what I'm a little bit harder on her than you are is because of how things went down. Had Scott also felt an affinity to her, then maybe he thinks that this whole Peter plan thing, like the whole like, using the idol to blindside somebody makes a little bit more sense and maybe helps navigate that vote, or can guarantee that that vote is going to Anna and asks Ty to give his idol to Anna. So while I give Scott credit for seeing the bigger picture, she also didn't give him an alternative that made it worth saving her.
Yeah, the problem with that whole idea was, as exciting as a prospect as it was for her, it really just didn't make sense for anyone else there, except maybe, even Ty would have had to sacrifice his idol, right? And for everyone else, it's a situation where the idea of keeping both Beauty Tribe members and then getting a third one as a result is still a problem.
Well,
and not only that,
that's why I'm saying Scott is sort of the key to that one.
Yeah.
Because what does Scott care if there are now 3 Beauty Tribe members that he is their partner? Now they are 4 strong, and the other 2 can't do anything to them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing in Scott's perspective. I think he made the right decision. But my point is that Anna did not make that easy. The second that he heard Anna was the target, it opened his mind to this whole, like, you know what? We got a whole bigger thing going on here. Let's just let her go.
Yeah, especially because, at least in this context, it looks as though the tribe was unanimous against Anna, right? And, so just from the perspective where Scott's at, which is a little precarious, even though just the nature of the numbers meant that Beauty had to be a target. But he knows he's in a tough spot. He's all by himself. He can't antagonize anybody, or doesn't want to if he can avoid it. And, as far as being with the group, you're right. He could have been number 4 with the 3 Beauty. But wouldn't it be better if everyone in your alliance is kind of on slightly more equal footing?
Oh, yeah. I'm fully in favor of what he did and why he did it and how it all went down.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to...
Really, the only upside...
That had Anna done a little bit better of a job, there would have been less clarity to this. I guess that's probably the easiest way to say this.
Well, the only upside to doing that plan would be if you feel like Anna is so much more of an asset than Peter that you would rather have her stay than Peter. And while that might be true.
Which I feel like that was part of on her. And when all of the result of her commitment to staying in the game is to bash Ty until she hears the idol plan and then just ride along with it. I want to feel like there was more she could have done to at least plant that idea that she might be more valuable than Peter. And not to say it would have resulted in anything different for her. But she didn't really give herself a fighting chance.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know what else she could have done.
Yeah. All right.
Now, that's not to say that she did the best ever and it was just bad luck, but a lot of it was bad luck. She just got put in a tough spot.
Yeah, and I'm not disputing that. I just, I want to feel like there was more she could have done. Yeah. That's all. I'm just going to leave. That's my last word on it.
All right, then. So over at the other tribe, we get a little bit more talking about the battle of the pairs. We have Nick working with Michelle, and so they're saying, hey, let's try to go bond with the Braun pair, even though we already know about the Cyanide 4, which is unbreakable. So, and especially just given that it seems like Nick and Michelle are not necessarily natural companions other than having been on the same tribe previously, I can only imagine that it's a less appealing sell to Jason and Sydney.
Yep.
So Jason is talking with Nick, and he kind of humors him because that's what you do, right? But then, of course, he does the whole thing that we always talk about.
Battle of the Pairs.
Battle of the Pairs.
That's a pair.
Nice. Yeah, no, I get it. It's only one pair, though.
I didn't want to spend pairs fighting. Like, I don't know if that even exists.
I am sufficiently impressed that you had a picture of a pair ready to fight just on command. So credit where credit is due. But in this case, Jason proceeds to do the thing about being a swing that is just the exact dangerous mindset to have, which is like, we kind of have all the power. I'm feeling really good. Which again, it's like, yes, there is some power to be held there, but it's also like anytime you find yourself in the swing position, it is literally saying there are two sides and I'm not definitively on either one. Which could mean, yeah, you get to pick sides. It also could mean that you're expendable. Yeah.
So it could also mean that you're France.
Yeah. So this is also where we get the stuff from Julia, who's off by herself, doesn't drink enough water while she's by herself. She gets dehydrated. She kind of melts down a little bit. But then it seems like she rallies. Even she's not happy, but at least she kind of gets up and starts doing stuff. She makes a fire and so on. And then we get a reminder too that she is only 18, which it occurred to me means that she is actually younger than the show. So that's kind of interesting to think about. She was not even born yet when Survivor premiered.
I think there have been other people like that, but
yeah, you're probably right. But I'm not necessarily saying that's the first time ever. I'm just observing that it's, makes me realize that I'm not that young anymore.
Yeah. I thought, that was it. What I took from this exchange was essentially what you did is, oh, this sucks for me and I'm really young, so I'm making a more dramatic deal out of it than it probably needs to be.
Well, that's what you do when you're 18.
Yes. Which I found amusing that the end of it was like, I'm the youngest player, but like I'm invited on here because I'm like, she didn't say I'm more mature, but there's sort of that implication that she, like, people didn't know she was that young because she's so mature, but yet she was acting so 18 in the scene. It was like, all right, yeah, no.
Yeah. It's now challenge time. I really liked this challenge, just especially because I like it when they have kind of a symbolic theme to them. Fishing in this case, you have to go and untie the nets with the fish-shaped puzzle pieces. You put them on the hooks and on the rack, to carry them up, and then you have to assemble it in a puzzle that looks like packing fish into like a fish crate. I just, there's a nice, just symbolic aesthetic there that I appreciated.
Yes.
It was also interesting to hear that the pieces were heavier than you might guess, just looking at them, that altogether they weighed about 100 pounds, is what Probst said. They must have weights in them, I think, to make them that heavy.
Yeah.
The piece of wood that size wouldn't be that heavy.
No, so there like 5 of them, so they're like 20 pounds each. Like
I think there were more pieces than that, but still.
Oh, yeah, there were more pieces, but there was only the 5 that made the puzzle, I thought.
There were 2 layers. I think they stacked.
That's right.
Yeah, so I think that's how it works. So maybe there were 10 pieces, and then they stacked in layers. They didn't really get into the details of it because
Well, anytime I'm not 100% clear on what happened, it's usually because of something with my dog. So
yeah, that works. That happens.
In this case, the night before I watched this episode, he had decided to gnaw some of the paint coating off of the brick fireplace. We have a brick fireplace that's painted white. He took a piece off of it. So about this part of it, I was dealing with like recoating because he was in bed while I was watching it, and so he wouldn't mess with it. And I was recoating the paint while trying to watch and trying to even it out. Like at the beginning when I started the episode, I just slapped some paint on there and got it to dry. But then I had to even it out so there wasn't like the part where he had bitten it out. So that's why I'm not as clear as what happened in the challenge. So
well, that's fine. So in any case, this is a challenge where, you know, like there was some stuff going on, but ultimately like it was interesting visually, but not dramatically. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing really especially exciting about the actual performance of the challenge. It was kind of
watching paint dry.
It was pretty even all the way to the puzzle, and then the puzzle was, I don't worry, I caught your joke.
I'm not ready to acknowledge it. I'm just letting you finish so we can move on.
All right then. So anyway, Chan Lo, the Blue Tribe, wins immunity. And then so now, as we go into the final sort of segment of the episode before Tribal Council, we have Ty at this point being, you know, like he's certainly aware of the dynamic too, in that it's going to be him or Anna. And so he has his idol, and this is where he's kind of pondering whether to use it or not. We kind of covered that already.
Yep.
We definitely see a continued dynamic of Peter being kind of counted on as a vote at the same time that they don't especially involve him. Like there was specifically a bit where you'd think it would be the 3 Brain Tribe members comparing notes and deciding what to do. But instead what it is Peter proposing Anna and Joe and Aubrey saying, I don't know, maybe it should be Ty. And he's like, well, don't you think it should be Anna? And like, we're going to go talk about it and we'll let you know. I was just like, boy, they're not especially concerned about him at this point, which I don't know. I mean, it might be a little bit of a mistake to try to force that dynamic now that he has other people he could go to if he starts feeling like they're not treating him right. But at the same time, it doesn't seem like the others like him either. Ty in particular says he doesn't like Peter, so Peter's kind of doing that to himself.
Yeah. That was the person he wanted to get rid of with his idol.
Yeah. So in any case, Ty just starts thinking about, well, you know, if I tell, you know, I could maybe get out Peter. And this is maybe, like, I don't think it's a bad thing in the long run, but I do think that it was an element where he kind of let his emotions get the better of him. You know what I mean? Voting out Peter instead of Anna in this context is really just an emotional decision because he likes Peter better than Anna. But he has to sacrifice his idol to do it. And even though he didn't end up doing it, now Scott knows he has it, right? And that ultimately, since Scott does seem to be genuinely, you know, affectionate towards Ty, and that there's like a sincere connection there, it's not really likely a problem. But at the same time, it is this, you know, there's an element where he gave up that information and didn't really, I don't know, at the same time that I say that, just the element of having people know that he has the idol does give that one extra nudge just in case they were maybe thinking of voting for him.
Yes. It also does a couple other things that we talked about. Some we talked about, which was part of the reason that he got so focused, like the emotional response was due to the fact that he had a goal of not being the guy voted out with the idol. Right. Like, so Peter being a target was a subset of that goal of like, God, I'm nervous. I might have to use my idol. Who would I use it on? Well, that guy's annoying. maybe I can convince people to do all that. Like he sort of amalgamated all that because of the idea that he needed to not go out with the idol.
Right.
The other piece, which is a little bit more positive, is I feel like he did need to tell Scott, whether he would have been able to know this or not at the time. By telling Scott he had the idol, and Scott accepting it and then telling him not to use it because Anna's the target, Ty accepting that trust, double checking with his eyes at tribal council. Like you saw, he looked at Scott and Scott said, no, don't use it.
Right.
Yeah. He didn't. And then he was rewarded for his trust in Scott.
Yeah.
He's in a better position. Yeah.
It's a trust exercise. There's an element of loyalty there because they, to some extent, had each other, you know, like they each could have done something not the best for the pair, but instead they chose to trust each other, and now they can move forward with that as the basis.
Right. And without the idol in play there, I don't think that level of trust comes.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I think ultimately it was good, but we kind of only know that after the fact, right?
Right. I think Ty's early decision was misguided because of the goal thing.
Right.
But ultimately resulted
out.
in trust. Yeah.
Well, it worked out, and it's also, this is just, you know, credit to Ty again. It worked out specifically because he had laid this groundwork of forming a good relationship with Scott.
Right. He knew Scott was a guy that if he was going to tell somebody about this, Scott was the guy to tell. And Scott rewarded that behavior by taking it a step further, analyzing the situation better than Ty could do himself, giving him information that Ty could not get himself, and then letting him know.
Did Scott actually tell Ty about Jason's idol? Or did he just tell us that?
No, the information he gave Ty was
don't play it.
Yeah. No, he didn't tell him about Jason's idol. He told him that he wasn't the target and that he was safe and did not need to use it.
Yeah, yeah. So the last note I have before the tribal council is Peter taking an analogy that really kind of left me scratching my head, because first of all, he said it like it's a saying that I've just never heard before. So maybe it is a thing that I've just never heard before. But it's also this element that's kind of simultaneously, when you really puzzle out what it means, kind of doesn't mean anything, but sounds creepy when he says it, which is tribal council is like high school prom. You don't know what you're going to get out of it, but you're going to feel something. Now, I think when you really work through it, it's like, okay, well, high school prom is an emotional time. So maybe you're going to feel lonely. Maybe you're going to feel rejected. Maybe you're going to feel in love. You know, it could be all sorts of things. And so what he's saying is, like, you don't know what the outcome is going to be, but it's going to be emotional no matter what. But hearing it come out of his face makes it feel like he's making a creepy joke about something. Even though it doesn't, it feels like that, even though it doesn't really make sense that way.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, there was just that element. I think that's part of it. It's part of what people are feeling when they don't like him, is that he just sort of has this demeanor about him that makes even more innocent things seem shadier. But also, it's just still like he doesn't help himself. Just like high school prom is just such a loaded cultural thing.
Well, and I think the other piece that you maybe identified without identifying was when you said it almost sounded like a saying I felt like I should know. Like, that's how he talks, is like he says things where that's where that arrogance thing comes from. Like, his whole demeanor makes it sound like you should already know this, and I'm just kind of referencing it. And if, you don't know that, then you're obviously stupid, even if they're not real things.
Yeah, feels...
You delivered that line like you felt like you should know it.
What it felt like it felt rehearsed. And like if it was a figure of speech, something would be rehearsed because you've said it before, you've heard other people say it, that sort of thing. But what it felt like is like he maybe came up with that line at some other point and said, "Oh yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to say that when I'm on camera."
Yeah, or he came up with it and he says it when he goes into surgery. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
who knows?
Who knows when he uses that?
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing with him. Like, he just kind of feels sketchy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And not like he's going to take your wallet kind of sketchy or like, but like, it's just, yeah.
It's like you just sort of, something about him that just feels a little bit uncomfortable.
It's just off.
Yeah. But he's an ER doctor. He's a specialist in emotional intelligence and social interaction. Anyway, so we
or the opposite.
Yeah, I know. I just mean that one just, we talked about that in that episode, but it just blew me away that he would even say that, because I'm like, are you aware what the stereotypes are about ER doctors?
Oh, yes. Anyway, we talked.
Oh yeah, ER was such a great TV show because everyone was just so easy to get along with and good-natured and low-key,
well balanced.
That's why that show was great, is because everybody was just so likable and you just wanted everybody to have pizza parties. Anyway, so we go to tribal council. Scott's feeling pretty confident, which is, a good place for him to be in, because, he potentially could have been in a tough spot, being the only Braun tribe member. But in a way, as we talked about, being the only one kind of almost takes the threat off of it. And then here's also where you mentioned Ty doing something that, and this is another example of something that is probably 100% sincere. It's actually who Ty really is. It's how he really feels, but it's also good strategy, which is to say, I like Anna. I don't like being set up against Anna, but here we are. So here's why I'm going to say, I hope you keep me. And that's just, it's someone else saying those same words might not come across so naturally, but it works for him because it really is who he is.
Yep. Well, and everything he described, he'd already done. So it wasn't like, it didn't feel like false promises. Like, it was just like, I'm just talking about stuff that I do.
And to turn this into another Peter thing, the whole bit where Ty's kind of joking around is like, look, the insides of my thighs are scraped up from this mango tree. Here, I'll show you. And then Probst's like, I believe you. And then Peter's like, no, drop them. He's like, what are you doing? You were not even involved in that conversation. It's like, you volunteered that without being asked. That was a weird, like, what? Yeah, he's kind of a weird guy. I was really intrigued and amused with Joe declaring that he doesn't think there is an idol, and that's the twist with the idols, is that there just isn't one. That seems like an odd conclusion to come to. I mean, just because you haven't found one so far, the idea that somehow you've decided, we thought there might be a twist, and the twist is that there isn't one. Like,
Yeah, that sounds like something Joe would come up with, really.
Yeah, so I don't know. I thought that was weird, but I was kind of amused, and especially amused when Ty goes, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's one either. I looked for one. I kind of got in trouble for looking, but no, I don't think so. I thought that was pretty fun. Yeah. Ty is just fun. I like watching him on TV. I'm glad he's on the show this season.
He's good.
Yeah. Peter is not concerned about a possible crack in the brain trio. He's in a position of power, you see. All right. Now, in the end, of course, we know that he wasn't really in danger. It seems like the group consensus had been that they weren't going to do that thing. They blindsided Anna. But it's also true that if anyone was going to go other than Anna, it was going to be Peter before it's going to be anybody else.
Yes.
And they didn't save him because of anything he did.
Yeah, he was in a position of power simply because a Beauty Tribe member was going to go.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a Beauty Tribe member. Like,
I bet you it would have been him if that wasn't a factor.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I was sorry to see Anna go, just because I felt like, regardless of whether she did like everything right in this situation, I think she was just in a tough spot. I'm not really sure that there was anything she could have done differently. That would have made a difference.
But yeah, I mean, so.
Yeah, so to be sure, we can armchair, Survivor what might have been better than what she did, but ultimately, I don't think anything would have been enough. Not against Ty. In the abstract, maybe, but I think he was just too solid an opponent. And so what my note actually says, sorry to see her go, but better than if it were Ty. And then in parentheses, I said, though Peter would have been better still. When Anna, is voted out, she's really bummed about it. And I feel like I identified with her, just in the sense that she really feels like she could have done more in this game. And it was she just really got put in a position that was not ideally suited for what her strengths are in the game. And it was bad luck. And that happens sometimes in Survivor. That's how it works out sometimes.
That's part of the deal. Yep.
And then so next time we have Debbie courting Nick, which I don't know, especially since we've kind of talked about how Nick feels a little bit off himself previously. Just he's a little bit more of a, I don't know, his emotional responses to things are just slightly off. But so who knows how that goes, but it seems like Debbie is trying to involve him somehow, which is interesting just because it seems to run contrary to what we thought was this unbreakable foursome.
Right.
So who knows what's going on there. But then what we also have apparently is Joe becoming increasingly suspicious that Peter's going to do something. So we'll see.
We'll see.
All right. So I think that does it for this episode. Thank you for listening and or watching, everybody. Just a brief scheduling note. I'm going to be out of town starting on Saturday all the way through the following Sunday. Not the next day, but a whole week. So I won't be able to, we won't be able to record this coming week. But we have a tentative plan to try to record for this coming, episode 6. We would record on the Monday after it airs. That's at least plan A, and we'll have to play it by ear.
Yes.
All right. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night.